Here we go. And so for my lecture, it was always interesting when you have a personal introduction slide that's going to come up when you always get introduced, whether you should have one or not. And so we'll talk a little bit about the background. I think in a fun way we'll talk about how we did the research as opposed to being a boring methodological way. And then when we get to our results, I'll kind of go back and forth comparing data to other parts of the world so we can see we have some relative notion of where the data stand as opposed to just talking about them. And we have some recommendations at the end. And at the end, some ideas that I have that we do at Texas Tech that we would like to share in Oman with our work. And so this is Texas Tech. I did not put up a slide of the state of Texas. So this is in Lubbock, Texas. It's a large comprehensive university where the Cultural Center had their conference a couple years ago. And so, as Harrison said, I'm a professor of sport and exercise psychology, but much of my work is with physical activity. And so it fits that notion of motivational frameworks in sport and exercise. I have these type of projects in Finland and Croatia and Lithuania, and then we're moving into Lithuania, Estonia, some different projects looking again at physical activity programs for children. And in Lubbock, Texas, I run after-school programs for elementary school children, and the funding's ending, but I have funds. It was from our U.S. Department of Education, a large grant the mechanism called Promise Neighborhood. And so I think, I always wonder if we all know this or not. I never know if people know this, is that exercise of a variety of types I think the list now is up to 22 to 25 different disease states that exercise prevents or helps to change or make us better or not let us get worse. And so with children, the idea is that you get 60 minutes a day of moderate to vigorous physical activity. So enough to where your heart is beating enough that you can talk, but not so comfortably to where you can't talk, which would be uncomfortable because you'd be breathing so hard. And so 60 minutes a day, then as we get older, we drop that to, it drops to 30 minutes a day-ish, 150 minutes a week, and then a variety of things have come into play now about strength training, or as you get older, some balance and coordination types of exercises. And so to get that, it's the notion of, does it have to happen? I don't know if it has to happen, but it's a darn good recommendation. Because as we know with longitudinal data, as an adult, the moment you start moving from a sedentary state, so let's say you haven't done intentional physical exercise for years, the moment you start engaging in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes a day, you start to see it's not exponential, but the decrease in cardiovascular disease state just starts to drop dramatically. So the 150 minutes might not be true. It's the moment people start moving. That's what's for sure true. And so here's some adult longitudinal type of information that physical inactivity accounts for 22% of cardiovascular disease and colon cancer. It accounts for 18% of any type of bone issues, 12% of diabetes, and 5% of breast cancer. So typically, besides smoking cigarettes, physical inactivity is just as bad as almost of smoking cigarettes. So physical inactivity. And so I think those type of findings or stats are ones that we don't know because we all have bad things happen to good people all day long. And that's what stinks about it, right? That's what really stinks about this world is bad things happen to good people all the time, right? So I can exercise a lot, but I can have a bad chink in my DNA and wake up and have a stroke, no matter how much I exercise. And so those type of things, our minds turn to a friend who exercises and think, oh, see, that's why it doesn't work, because they, but overall, those numbers I think are staggering, and since we are down the street from the Treasury Department, the numbers, the amount of money spent on health care, right, that could be avoidable just by moving are staggering numbers. And it's across the globe, it's staggering. And so I wanted to, I don't know if everybody is familiar with this, it might be something you want to look at. The global matrix is, we'll reference some data from the global matrix. It's a conglomerate of people who are moving, it's a scorecard for countries that countries put together about their systems in place for children and movement. Right? And so the 3.0 is to be released right at Thanksgiving. It's not American. It's not an American group. It wouldn't be the week of Thanksgiving. But it's a neat thing. And so the first two, so Global Matrix 1, Global Matrix 2, in general, across the board, across the globe, of the 38 countries that are part of the Global Matrix, overall physical activities for children is very low. So if you give it a grade, an average grade, the average grade is a D. Right? And so does a D mean that nobody moves? No, it doesn't mean that at all. There are always rays of hope whereby there's groups of people in programs or whatever it is, and they move a ton, right? But then there's groups that don't move at all. And so in my schoolwork, in these programs, we're pre-K, so before kindergarten to 5th grade, we know very easily we can mirror anybody's world data sets. By 3rd grade, children start to dramatically make the decision of to move or not. All right, and so that's an early age that somebody starts to make that decision. It used to be in America, it was the notion it was in junior high, because we start having sport teams, and then sport people get cut because they're public school teams. But our world, all of our worlds have moved to a sports club system, right? And kids play outside of school all the time. And so typically across this global matrix, these years of this, it's Denmark, Slovenia, and the Netherlands end up having the best scores. There's no particular rhyme or reason I know for that to be true, because you'll have a country like Slovenia with a poor grade for governmental resources, yet kids move. Or you'll have a country with high government resources, America, and you will have a grade of F minus. I don't know what right? And we have tons of resources, right? So it's not, but then you have Denmark and the Netherlands who they make it, and they probably have good resources. Small countries, they have money, nice places. And so here's some World Health Organization data that can be discouraging, that's for sure. So as we move up, as we go from elementary school to middle school and high school, I have this on the next slide, big, so we can look at it. That we're talking, once it gets to yellow, it's 75% children or adolescents in that age range are inactive. So that started at 75%. So if we look at the picture, right, the map of these are self-report data. So the scary part, typically, right, of self-report data are that they're an overestimation of things, and so that would mean that this is, worse as in if we think that physical activity is important, then this is a bad slide, because if we put heart rate monitors on it, most likely the data would show even more inactivity. All right, so you look around the globe for places where these data have been collected by the World Health Organization, and it's not the best. Right? So you need, especially when it gets to above 95%. And I've seen countries, Portugal, females, adolescents, the data are, it's like 1.9% achieve basic, physical activity recommendations. And 1.9%, that's zero, right? That's, you put heart rate monitors on that, it's zero. You'd have to be on a sports team. And I always like to be positive because there are huge rays of hope. Because as we become adults, people do move more, right? Because our scale, we have the world. I'll have to email the World Health Organization. They should use a different color scheme because our percentiles are different. Now it's much better on this picture, and so So as opposed to this being 95% or above, it's now 50% or above. And so we do have good pockets of that where people do move. And I think the general notion is, you have 60% of people who move and 40% of people who don't move. Right? And so a lot of our resources, like public school in America, the notion is that unfortunately 90% of the resources are spent on only 10% of the children. So there's issues, problems, whatever it is, and I think that happens with health, right? We have 90% of our resources, that's an over-exaggeration, are spent on the 10% who are unhealthy, but it's a large percentage. I heard a talk I don't remember, I was in Czechia, and the exercises medicine group spoke, and their numbers were staggering of how many resources are on the people who don't move, as opposed to those who do move. Just going back, we know with longitudinal data sets that even if I come back, I drop out, but I can come back. So if I get early experiences that are positive and somewhat encouraging, that I can come back. Right? If I don't get any experiences as a youth, or get really super negative ones, it would be difficult to come back as an adult and decide to be an exerciser. It depends on what our reasons are. That would be another talk for another day, because that's always very difficult. Why I engage determines a lot about why I do it, right? It's health or good looks, or my dad had a stroke, so I don't want to have a stroke. So here's how we did it. We had, we'll talk about these 4 different areas. We did some pretty darn good super science. We clustered with the help of the education ministry. We clustered on 5 areas that were the most important or most lived in, and we pretty much randomly took 5 public schools within each of those districts, and then within those schools we chose randomly 2 of the classrooms. So we had our accelerometers, which will be on a slide. We had enough that it made sense for 50 at each school, because we had about 260, and so one class has more, one class has less, that we'd make it. And so we did that. And so we had, in the end of our big push, where everybody did questionnaires and our watches, which we'll show in a second, we had 1,026 children complete everything. And what we're really, really proud of, the talk could end here almost. I think this is the largest objective measurement of physical activity in the history of the Middle East. I'm pretty sure that's true. Now, I don't read, I'm very American-centric, and I'm sorry about that. So I don't read any other languages, but I know how to use the library. I know how to search. I'm pretty good at searching. And so I'm pretty sure that this is the largest objective accelerometry-based measurement in the history of this part of the world. And so we chose 4th grade. Why 4th grade? Because the watches fit, and watches are cool at that age. And if I'm a 5th grader, they're not nearly as cool. And if I'm younger, they slide off, because it's hard, right? Watches you make watches, and do they fit? You have to have wristbands over wristbands over wristbands. So there's the watch. It's a Polar. It's a company from Finland, and they have offices across the globe. And it's a nice watch. It's a good accelerometer. Dr. Kim is an epidemiologist by trade. So we just published a paper just 2 days ago we did a bunch of fancy stuff to make sure our formulas, so when we reported the data to this group, that our formulas were correct. So we took a lot of time in my East Lubbock projects to use the watches with other kind of gold standard measures, so then we could adjust our regression formulas to make the best possible estimation. And so we got physical activity objectively, we got weight, and date of birth. And so our physical activity, we put the watches on in the morning, and then we waited 2 days, and we took them off on really day 4. Right? So we'd had enough data to cut for at least 2 full days, and really more than 2 full days. And then we got some self-report measures. We asked them about their physical activity pursuits, and we'll look at that. We looked at their screen time behaviors and their physical self-perceptions. Because we do know, and it will come back, that at least for females, that how I perceive myself does influence if I engage in certain activities. And since we are doing physical activity, we looked at physical self-perceptions. And so let's look at weight status. And so here's our results. We know that obesity can be a really bad thing. So it's a bad thing. It's something that we track and we need to look at. And so we can see here, I have a slide with the World Health Organization coming up next. I just started with a USA stat to make this a full slide that we have. We are going to follow the same pattern as the world. We have boys are more obese than girls. And you look across those data, they're all pretty similar, for after that. So boys are more obese, less than they are heavy, but they're more obese, and that's worse than being slightly overweight. And so that's above, or above the 95th percentile on any of the weight classifications, whether it's the CDC or the World Health Organization. And so I made this slide here from the World Health Organization has done quite an outstanding job of tracking obesity across Europe. And so I put our line here. This is our boys line of obese. And so it is discouraging. I mean, I'd say that's probably a discouraging line because that means compared to most countries in Europe, compared to most, the Oman fourth graders are more obese than other countries, than when you look at that line. So you want to be, we want our line to be much lower into the dark blue, which is the percent obese. So it lines up with Spain, Italy, Greece, Cyprus are heavier countries. And so let's look at the girls. So our girls, this is our line here. And so better or worse than the boys? I don't know if it's better or worse. I think it's probably the same pattern, that in general, again, the Omani sample that we have, which is a pretty nationally representative fourth graders, are more obese than most parts of Europe. Now, I don't know about the Middle East. I don't know about China. I know across Europe. So again, if there's countries that struggle, it's Spain, Cyprus, Greece, Italy. And so let's look at what they said they did. So you can think about stuff we talked about before. We'll look at back again. What did they say they do? So how many said that they met 60 minutes a day? About 40% of the boys, and getting close to 30% of the girls met. And so you can see clearly, at least in this slide, the notion is that boys are on more sports teams. And most likely that those sports teams, that participation is what helps you, meet the 60 minutes a day. And there's plenty of evidence to show it's always a notion that that's the golden key to this thing. And it's not true at all, because you go to sports practices, and I use American examples. LeBron James has the ball, and everybody else is standing and watching, right? Because he's really good. And so, at the youth sport level, that's the same phenomenon. I stand and watch. I'm participating, but I'm not really moving, because I'm watching Messier kick the ball, and the coach is really excited because, man, that kid was Messier's pretty good, I bet, as a youth. I bet he's pretty darn good. And so the coaching staff is excited, even if it's a youth sport, it's a dad or whatever it is. People are pretty excited. So all of a sudden people start to stand and watch. And standing and watching becomes youth sport to those children. Now the good news across the Middle East of self-report data, Qatar and UAE are part of the global matrix. And I would encourage Oman to become part of the global matrix. I think you can be part of 4.0, because we'd have enough data to help be a part of this. That Oman is our data, our self-report data are better than, more children move in Oman than they do and 2 reasonably neighboring countries who are part of the global matrix. And so here's our objective data. So this is all day. So what we did was everybody, the watch has that mechanism to show that it's, you know, above ground level or sleeping level, right? And so we all wore it around 12 hours or 13 hours a day. And you can see down here, so good news for the boys, but very good news. These are great data. So we had 56% of our boys meeting the 60 minutes a day guidelines. And I think that's impressive. I mean, we all like it to be 100%, or people in kinesiology would. I think that those are impressive data. That's a good chunk. And our problem would be if, you know, we have one thing right now. It's females moving. That's an enormous problem. And so over here, these effect sizes are differences. What was the actual meaningfulness of the difference? It's always hard to judge meaningfulness of difference. I don't really have to look at data to go, most of the girls don't meet the requirements, so I don't really care what the rest of the data said. I think that's all you really need to know. And the difference of average minutes, we have another slide to break them down into categories of minutes, because obviously means and standard deviations, I rounded those numbers, those can be deceiving, right? Because it would look like that if 69 minutes, that's a good number of minutes. And then 43 is not bad, right? But our percentage of meeting is the issue. And so let's look at this one. And so I broke this down, Dr. Kim and I did. I think this is what's the information. How much do we need to move the group so we all break 60? Right? I think that's informative. And so you can see that we have a long ways to go, minute-wise, to start moving like our bottom groups of females. We got, you know, 20, not 20, 20, you know, so we have 40% there, that's right, that are 39 and fewer minutes, so we have a long ways to go to move that group. Whereas the boys, we would have, you know, we maybe, you know, move 8, 9 more minutes and move this entire bar up here, and then you get across 65%. And again, I think that's impressive. That's a good chunk of boys moving. And saying something from watching just me is terrible. You know, that's not very scientific. I know just being around at the schools, when it was recess time, it was the boys just going to go crush it, right? They couldn't wait to run down the, you know, move quickly down the stairs to get outside, or, you know, move to the play yard. And so that is a different thing. It's the same thing that I can see every day in my after-school programs, when it's like, let's go hit the playground, let's go hit what? You just see who moves quicker, faster to that. The excitement level at times seems to be higher in boys than girls. And so World Health Organizations look at after-school programming to be if we split the day. So we split the day whereby we need to get 30 minutes in school or before school and 30 minutes after school. Right? Because schools do have recess, schools do have physical education, children can walk to school. So we try to be fair about the number. And so ours are the same. It appears, so this is from after school till they take it off at night, late at night, that our numbers line up the same. We didn't have any real change, right? We have a couple more females that are achieving 30 minutes after school than they are achieving 60 minutes across the day, and our number of boys is identical. So whether they're getting 30 and 30, it doesn't truly really matter, but that's what it seems to be, right? I'm getting 30 in school, and I'm getting at least 30 after school. So that would be, again, this would be our concern bar right there. That's our major concern. Now when we go to the physical self-perceptions data, a typical self-perception scale asks about how strong you think your muscles are, how quickly do you think you can move, are you good at different types of activities. And so we had a questionnaire that's been used a lot, that has been translated into Arabic and used in that part of the world. So we use that one, and it had 6 general questions in that framework. And so I'm going to come back to that. That's just a slide, and then we're going to come back to it. Because the numbers become meaningless, right? As in, what's a mean score? There's no known mean of what strong muscle should be. It's how it relates to the movement data that makes it meaningful. Sitting. It's terrible. Like conferences and things, talks are terrible. We should all have spin bikes, and we could get a little movement. And so self-reported TV watching. So in our world, we have that confusing data, right? That even if I go get after it at lunchtime and exercise really, really hard, but if I really am sedentary the rest of the time, am I really getting the benefit? Those are confusing data to people. And it's never good to confuse people to say, well, if you go exercise at lunchtime, but if you sit from 8 to 11:55 and then from 1:05 to 5, and you go home and sit, that you're not getting anything out of it, that doesn't seem fun to say to people. Right? So I think the notion is that sitting for long periods of time is a bad thing, and that's why we have technology that our phones beep at us. It's time to get up and move. Right? And so I think that's a good thing. I want to say, as we moved, we have 2 slides. To my knowledge, these are the lowest amounts of self-report TV watching anywhere in developed countries in the world. Dr. Kim and I want to know what he has. Technology where you wear a camera strapped to your chest and you start moving. We want to go back and do that because I want to know what everybody's doing. I want to know what they do when they go home. So not at all, very little. I mean, that's not much, and that's good. That's good. It's good. And then it's computer video usage, not at all. It's very high. That's very un-American. And then you have, I think these are low, I think those are low percentages. I think those are, again, worldwide, those are extremely low percentages in developed countries of using technology. Okay, so what mattered the most? Right? And so what we did is we used looked at odds ratios of all our variables and made confusing, never-ending tables of data, and so I thought we'd just do it in one slide. If I'm going to achieve those minutes, how would I best invest our resources? How would we best do it? For boys, we'd have more sports teams. Right? I've always said in our world, not having enough available outlets is the true problem. Right? And then as we get older, we start having more elite teams, and there's something seemingly morally wrong with having teams that aren't good, but it's not the point. That's just flat out not the point. We all know the teams that are the best, and then they have more resources per se to do things, like more Under Armour gear, whatever they have, but that doesn't mean the rest of the children don't want to have a great time playing. Nobody's ever said that. They never said, oh, I don't want to play because I don't get the best shoes, right? And maybe somebody said that, but not mass groups of people, right? They just want to play. So just having more teams, so just having a school day organized, if I end at 2 or 2:30, and all I've got to do is play small-sided soccer for 45 more minutes. Get a couple extra soccer balls, so everybody gets involved. That's all I have to do to save $1 trillion in, say, a 20-year span on healthcare and loss of productivity of people in a country. 45 minutes a day of small-sized soccer. That's ridiculously fun, Harrison, to have that kind of. I can't emphasize how encouraging that should be. That's all we're asking. And so in our school systems, I get pretty worked up. I get pretty emotional about it because I know all I need is a couple caring adults and the school systems to simply move their day. If it becomes a money issue, just move somebody 30 minutes. That their day is, 8 to 3 instead of 7:30 to 2:30. That's all we're asking. We're not asking for the world. Right? We're not asking for the Treasury Department to open up the vault and you walk in and you take money. The female ones is tougher. The female issue, if I'm going to make a difference, and it's a big difference, it's just as big as this. It's from a statistical standpoint, having higher overall physical self-perceptions is equal statistically to get a female to move more, a young girl to move more, as it would be to have just some more sports teams, sports participation, right? And so that notion is different because I need to do more. I need to engage you in a super positive way. And that's not hard to be positive, right? But then I need to move as well, right? Because if I just engage you, I still need that outlet of the movement, right? And so I'm going to need two things. I'm going to need perhaps a program where I'm trained to be unbelievably positive and to choose games and activities that are fun for everybody, right? I don't think rugby's fun for every girl. I just use rugby. You know, that doesn't seem to be fun. That's not fun for me as a guy. You know, so we need to make some wise choices as opposed to choices that are fun for the instructor. You know, that's very American, right? You just do what the dad or the best kid wants to do, right? And so a summary statement, then we'll have some other thoughts. If we do this at a young age, our longitudinal data sets do show that we can come back as an adult. And if I miss out my teenage years because of other interests, you know, I go sit and play guitar at Starbucks for 4 years. But then I can get out of that mode and realize I'm not going to be a guitar person, and then I got to get back to the real world. And then I just said that. I said the same thing twice. But we got to be active. We protect ourselves, and then we need to be able to do these activities as kids and come back. Does it have to be soccer? No, it doesn't have to be soccer, but that's a reasonable choice. And so let's look at, I want somebody to take me up on this offer. I just want one school to take me up on this offer. So when periods change in America, but when I was in Oman, the floors are different, but tiles are always tiles, right? Tiles are tiles anywhere in the world. If I simply turn on a metronome, if I just simply do that and go around the room for 5 minutes to a fun song, that's all I've got to do 6 times. And I just got 30 minutes. That's all I've got to do. And when I say that to people, you know what? They look at me like I am crazy. Like I have just broken every educational policy in the world. I said, listen, I've been around the world. Every school has 12-inch or 24-inch tiles or carpet, you know, with lines. And I said, in our programs, in our after-school, we follow the school rules, which are great rules, is I have a certain distance I keep from you. So I don't push that, right? Right? And those tiles, those floor things, are the actual distance of the rules. Right? So if I stay in my square and you're in your square, then we are not, you know, yes, I can lean, but I don't, you know, I would really want to be in trouble if I have to lean and hit you, right? So I stay in my square, and if I go 2, 2, 2, 2, as we all move up and down the hallway to a metronome, about this, there we go, about this, we get it. What else do we have to do for those 5 minutes between changing classes? We get in trouble. Class clown's got to be a class clown. Right? You know, the things happen. It's all we've got to do. It's all we've got to do. Somebody take me up on the offer. My programs are different in that, you know, there's money involved, right? There are monies. There's large monies involved. There aren't always going to be large monies involved. And we've built a culture with our schools, so very low-performing schools whereby perhaps, you know, 50% or fewer could read at their actual grade level. So some real challenges, right? And so the culture is that parents expect the programs to be there, right? And in our programs, we have about 90 minutes. Everybody gets physical activity because that was the promise of the grant mechanism of my portion. And then we do every other thing under the sun. We have arts, music. I love playing this. Yeah, I mean, we have all sorts of things we need to do. We need to learn to read. That's what we need to do. Right? Can't read, I can't do math. Right? That's what we need to learn to do. And so after school, things are pretty easy. As we talked a couple slides ago, all we're talking about is 45 minutes or 30 more minutes, or 35 minutes would be good. Start up, take down. Right? If we can just extend the day a little bit. Small-sided games with a little bit of skill is what matters. And we homeschool, and so I guess it's on YouTube. I know I have to be careful. You know, we don't send our children to public school in America. We homeschool, and so I ran a homeschool physical activity program, and there's the families there. Well, we had a great time, and so all we did is we chose small-sided games that required little skill. Because volleyball is fun if you're the star. It is no fun for everybody else who can't even come close to hitting the ball, right? So it's serve, in, point, everybody just watched it. There's nothing else that happens until you have real skill. It's real fun with balloons, because we all can do balloons. But people can't think about that, because they're adults and they think about Olympics or whatever. They think about something too grand. It's real fun with balloons. Soccer is really fun if you have one team in blue, one team in red. You don't have to. You don't have to use American colors. And you have 3 or 4 sets of balls and a couple extra goals. And it's like pinball. It is so much fun because David Beckham, I bet, always was a scorer. I bet he always, right? It's a one ball, no fun. You throw it all like a arcade type of game, it is an absolute blast. Right? And then everybody's engaged. Girls, this is a Texas soccer team. Doesn't matter if they're good or not, they are pretty good, darn good. But those girls, when you speak to them, they had this. Right? Now, they had talent, but we all have hidden talents that never come out until an adult or somebody has encouraged us to use that talent. They just remain hidden unless we get lucky. I don't know if I ski well. I live in Texas, so we have to build a culture worldwide. It's not a country-specific thing, but a teacher model who will do it as well. In America, we have a program, Girls on the Move, and there's a large grant that did a randomized controlled trial across the nation of that program. And it's always, discouraging when somebody, picks on you. But the girls then move, right? 90 minutes, average movement time. I'm making up numbers, so it's going to be on YouTube. I don't want to offend him. 16 minutes, 14 minutes of time, right? And you know what the #1 predictor is? It's whether the coach ran or not. If I plop down, say, hey, see that track? Boop. I'll be here. Boop. Nothing happens, right? And it has to be a competent person who goes and engages, because if I don't go engage, it's not a marathon, right? I go run a marathon, come back, and oh, okay, because I want to run a marathon. It's children. Children want to have fun, but without the encouragement as I get older, it doesn't seem so much fun. All right, so the current work that we're doing at Texas Tech, we go to schools, our schools, we go 5 days a week, we go 4 to 5 hours a day, and we have 30-minute lesson plans that build on fundamental movement skills. There's about 12 of those, and we work on those, and we have our heart rate bands on. We got a seamstress to make them fit, kindergarten age children. We have a video camera on our Mac, and we do it all live screen recording. So the heart rate's there of the coach, of the children, and then we have our lesson plan, and we find out all the holes, right? Because we're not going to engage a lesson plan that we can't make work. And so we do that. We do it 5 days a week, 4 or 5 hours a day. We pull children, and we have lesson plans, and we got to get fired up and do it. And we're trying to build a sustainable program by which we can show that if you engage in these type of things, that it will work. And I always tell my crew, and I'll stop talking, If I see that the coach's heart rate dips below that magical green color on the screen, that means you're moving, it's going to be a problem. It might not be a problem with a kindergarten student who's off the wall because it's fun, it's great, it's neat, it's Disneyland, right? It's so neat. Right? You pulled out of class, you got special resources being applied to you, but it changes. Once I hit 3rd grade, it changes. Right? I've got to have the coach and the plan intact that I know that we're all going to have fun and move. That's what I have for you.